and say welcome to everybody. And thank you very much for joining us here. And most of all, welcome to our star guest, Joe Bailey, who's been a huge mentor, positive influence, teacher, support of Barbara and I. And these are a series of calls in which are in the addiction group, and they're kind of loosely based around the themes in the book that Barbara and I wrote. And anyway, we're absolutely delighted that you're here today, Joe. And um, I know that you may have to, that this call may have to finish early, but it's great to have you for, for as long as we do. And
Oh, no, no, I'm fine.
oh,
I moved things around, so we're
oh,
good.
well,
Thank you, Joe.
appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
And broadly, the topic is resilience. I haven't got the title in front of me, but broadly, the topic is resilience, and it also, I think, kind of fits in with your most recent book, because you've published many books, which have also been hugely helpful and inspirational. So, Joe, I'm just going to hand it over to you, to talk about whatever seems on top, and for as long as you like, and then I'm sure there'll be questions and feedback and so on after that. Joe Bailey.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I wasn't prepared to give a talk, but that's all right. I don't have any trouble doing that. Just ask my wife. I can shut up at that guy. But it's so good to see the two of you, and I can't see everybody else, but it'll be delightful to have a conversation with all of us today about this, because I find that whenever I speak from the heart, it touches other people's hearts, and they get inspired to say things or ask things that are coming from their own inner guidance or wisdom. And that's really, I guess that's what I think we all need. I think what the world needs now, more than at any time, we've always needed it, but we really need to find something inside each of us that we can absolutely trust. Whether that's in dealing with a recovery from an addiction, living with someone with an addiction, living in the ever changing, uncertain world that we all live in and always have lived in, by the way. This isn't any different than at any other time in history. It just seems in many ways that we're kind of coming to some sort of boiling point. And one of the things I talk about in my book, Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane, is in the first chapter of the book, is that this is not unique, these times that we're going through. At many points in history, humanity has been at a crisis point, a change point. I just been watching the biography of Benjamin Franklin that Ken Burns, the great historian, biographer, filmmaker, has just made about Ben Franklin and the American Revolution and the birth of democracy in America. And that was one of those times where we, as a planet, were moving from kings and queens, monarchies, towards a more democratic, all-inclusive way of living. And America, of course, was a huge leader and pioneer in that. But it was not without pain. It was not without fear and uncertainty and insecurity. But with the wisdom of people like Benjamin Franklin, who were amazingly inspired, they came up with uh, incredible ideas that would transform the way we live with one another, that we govern one another. And and that was just, and that was in the kind of on the heels of the Age of Enlightenment, where the scientific revolution took off, and all of these other times in history where we've reached kind of this crossroads, this crisis point, where we had to evolve. We had to evolve in our own consciousness in order to survive and in order to thrive. And so I think for me, the three principles, an understanding, a deeper understanding of the mind, and a deeper understanding of our connection to spirituality and our psychology, that they're one and the same. That is already transforming hundreds of thousands of people around the planet, including all of you and all of us at this point, with the three principles and what Sydney Banks brought into the world, is really rippling out throughout the planet and touching not just a few people, but literally hundreds of thousands of people through lots of books like your guys' book and my books and many other books and podcasts like this, and people being inspired by seeing their family member change, or a loved one, or their boss, and so it's going out very organically, one person at a time. As each of us transforms collectively, there's a critical mass that is at some point reached, and it shifts the consciousness. And I think that's what's happening. So I'm very hopeful at this time. I'm very inspired at this time to continue to work and to write and communicate about this, because everybody is so hungry for this. People are so full of fear, and of course, most recently with what's the latest crisis after the pandemic, of course, is what's going on in Ukraine, and more broadly with the rise of totalitarianism and dictatorships around the planet, and how democracy is being tested once again. How do we come together instead of divide? And so those are some of the themes that I've been addressing with people in groups that I talk to. But more to the point of you guys' podcast, you may want to focus more on how this understanding relates to recovery from addiction. I'm not sure, but I'm happy to go in any direction in response to whatever you guys are interested in.
Oh, Joe, thanks so much. And I'm sure both Barbara and I have plenty that we'd like to ask you about, or get into conversation. But before, I would really like to, we do have a number of guests on the call, a number of people. So I'd love to give you that opportunity to come in. And there's actually people from all around the world here today.
Yeah, I see several who are very
Australia,
familiar to me.
Mexico, Scotland,
Yeah,
several
yeah.
places and I'm not sure where Jacqueline Schleiss comes from, but yeah,
Well, I know Divyesh Shah from, I think, Australia, right?
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Elena's in Mexico.
yeah.
So we are covered across the globe here.
Elena, I don't see Elena,
Elena,
but
she says she's driving, but she
Elena,
wanted to hear you, Joe.
Yo voy a hablar en español para Elena, ¿ok?
Okay.
I just did a podcast in Spanish not too long ago with Marina Galan, and I don't speak Spanish well enough to give a talk in it, but I was able to pretend like I could.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Well, for those of you who are here to hear Joe, we had just so we're not talking about false advertising. We were taking a chapter out of our book, and we wanted to call Joe in to talk specifically, since he's just written his wonderful new book on resilience, to talk a little bit about innate mental health and resilience, sort of in contrast to the disease concept with addiction. So that was sort of our loose thinking. But, we are certainly open to whatever people want to hear. So we really invite you to jump in and ask whatever questions you have. If you would like us to focus this on addiction, if that's sort of why you're here, or if you just kind of want to be in Joe's presence and listen to him share more about this, the work that he's doing with resilience. It certainly is not limited by any stretch of the imagination, but the approach that we took in our book was to say that, in a way, when you tell someone that they're diseased and broken, it's kind of the the opposite of telling someone that they're innately healthy and well and have everything they need on board already to meet the challenges, whatever they are in life. So, we just, we're really open to letting this go where it will. But Joe, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to touch base about any of that.
Yeah, well, a lot has been bubbling up for me this morning as I reflected about our conversation today. And so I would like to talk about that a little bit, kind of kick things off. Hello, we got a couple of new people here. They look like they might be from Canada. I think they might be. All the Canadians always sit in front of a fireplace, I've noticed. I guess it's to stay warm, like Minnesotans. Hi. So this is what came to me. And it's funny when I say that because I have no idea what came to me earlier this morning, but I will say that anyway, because what's coming to me right now is I was trained as a clinical psychologist. And oddly enough, I fell in love with working with alcoholics. When I was doing my internship in clinical psychology at a mental health center, they had just opened it up and gotten a big grant, and they said, Joe, you're in charge of the addiction program. And I'm just a green 22-year-old kid knowing nothing about addiction. And I said, well, I don't know anything about addiction. And then they said, nobody else does either, so you're in charge. And I was just like thrown into the deep end of the pool with the heroin addicts and the alcoholics. In the first group, there was a guy there with a gun and a knife, and it was like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? And they all just about came to fisticuffs the first night, and I was like, I am in way over my head. But luckily, there was a lovely man named Bud who was an ex-Marine, and I was doing my conscientious objector alternate service at this mental health center, and he was a Marine that just got back from Vietnam, and he had a transformational experience from his alcoholism. He was one of the most spiritual, joyful, happy human beings I had ever met in my life. And he was a trained warrior, and I'm a pacifist. So he and I worked together on this program. He is a volunteer, me as an intern. And I learned more from him than all of my professors in graduate school. He walked into a room and it would fill with joy because his smile radiated a true serenity, a true joy about being alive. He had had a near-death experience. He was drunk. His car was stalled on a train track because he rolled it, and he was upside down, pinned in the car as he watched the locomotive come towards him. And during that time, he was sure it was his death because he was covered with gasoline and, fumes and et cetera, and a train was about to hit him. And it was at that moment he had an awakening. And he miraculously was thrown from the car when the train hit it. He survived unscathed, and that was his transformation. So I fell in love with Bud and with what he had to say, and it is what got me into the world of addiction. But as I got into it more deeply and worked at the Johnson Institute, very famous training center for addiction counselors in Minnesota. I was in the family department working with training people in family therapy. It was all about the Minnesota model, which was all about the disease concept, about the 12-step programs. It was all about looking back in your past, doing a fifth step and a fourth step. And so in my own marriage, I was divorced and had alcohol in my relationship. So I was in Al-Anon, and I was all involved in 12 steps myself as a codependent. So I thought that was what you had to do. You had to go back and work through the past, and you had to relive all your sins. It was like going to confession, which I'm a recovering Catholic as well. Uh, so I knew about that. But I was, but it was revolutionary in the sense that I was bringing family therapy into working with the alcoholic, not just focusing on the alcoholic, but looking at the whole family system. And that was an evolutionary step. But it was all about fixing the problems and working through the past. And it was a very painful process for us therapists, as well as for our patients. And in spite of that, some people did get a certain amount of serenity and recovery, and it helped a lot of people. But in the process, I was completely burned out and ready to quit my job when I met Sydney Banks. And that was when my world turned inside out, upside down, and everything I had learned and experienced became obsolete when I met Sid, which was very disturbing because I had so well honed it for a decade. And all of a sudden, poof, it was gone. And but I knew in my heart that whatever I was doing wasn't getting people to where Bud, that first alcoholic in recovery I had met. Everyone was getting more and more serious about their life and themselves and analyzing and thinking about and doing techniques. And what Sid had to say was so simple. And it was all about mental health. It was about reawakening what was already there, alive in every human being that could never be destroyed. This thing in AA they called serenity, spiritual awakening. Sid and his principles pointed people directly to that spiritual awakening as the transformational process, as the cure. So rather than focusing on the disease and the past and what was wrong with people, taking people directly to the doorstep with an understanding of that we're already not broken. We're not broken. We're whole. And we've just covered it up innocently with habitual thinking. And we've identified with it. So the disease model told us that in order to get well, you have to first accept the label, the identity of addiction. I am a sex addict. I am an alcoholic. I am a codependent. And this was well intended. This was not done out of cruelty. This was done out of love and innocence. But what I found was that for me and for my patients, they carried that around as a new identity that was not a true identity. It was a description of their symptoms, a description of their habits, a description of their past, but it was not their true identity. And in AA, the goal of AA was a spiritual awakening. That was the 12th step. Once having had this spiritual awakening, we shared it with others. So there's some truth in that. As we've found the principles, it has awakened us, and you can't help but want to share it. You want to share it because it feels so good to share it. It feels so important to share it. So it's a natural thing to want to help others once you found something true for yourself. So after I met Sid, and most of my practice was people in recovery, mostly families, couples, kids, children of alcoholics, spouses of alcoholics, drug addicts, etc. As I taught them the principles, they just woke up so quickly without having to go through all the past, without having to identify themselves with their past, with their illness. They became unshackled from their identity. So I began to share this with other therapists and with other people and with treatment centers here in Minnesota. And as I trained the staffs of several treatment centers here, the thing I heard from patients more than any from addicts was, I can't believe everybody here sees me as well rather than as sick. And that alone changed me. No one has seen me as who I am until I got to this treatment center. The fact that you saw me as well gave me hope and gave me the sense of possibility that I could fully recover who I am. So it not only helped the therapists, the counselors working with people to see them as well, because then they weren't judging, they weren't fixing, they were pointing people back to their health. That felt good for the therapist. They saw better results. There was no resistance from the patients, zero resistance. Where in the other model, the disease model, there's total resistance. You always had to going into battle with your patients. So for me, the implications of this understanding of the principles that Sid brought to the world have huge implications for the treatment of addiction, in that it is pointing people back to the essence of who they are, that they had lost conscious awareness of, and began looking outside of themselves for that feeling that comes with being your true identity, your true self. And so once people in recovery from addiction realize these principles, it does several things. It not only relieves them of their obsession with the addiction, but it prevents transfer from one addiction to another addiction, which is very common. A lot of people in recovery get off of alcohol or drugs, and then they become addicted to being codependent with other people, trying to fix them, or they get addicted to pornography or to gambling or to something else, because they haven't found what they're looking for. So they just keep looking outside. But once you've found what you're looking for inside, the search is over. The compulsion to look outside is alleviated. And that's true recovery. But it's not recovery from addiction, it's recovery of your health. So that's, in summary, how I would see it now. Any comments, questions?
I just loved listening to you, Joe, and the something you said near the beginning about just the incredible value of having
A
something.
little vodka with my. No, I'm kidding.
The thing,
I'm kidding. I can't.
the thing that you said about having something inside that we could really trust is um it's such a wonderful reminder, and yeah, that alone just really grounded me today, and I have, since I came into the principles, have all sorts of things have happened in the external of my life, and not all of them what would traditionally be called wonderful, or bereavement, huge changes in career, and kids leaving home, all of that stuff, and in fact and this understanding that has, I've been graced with, because that is how it came. It just have hit me like a train, has carried me through that. And yet, at times in recent years, I've been concerned, particularly in Scotland, we have massive division at the moment, and that has, I've allowed that to play on my mind at times, and it's not that there's necessarily nothing to be done, or no action to be taken in the world, but coming back first and foremost to um, the truth of the essence within, an unfailing inner guide, and that is all the potential of which is always there. Such a lovely reminder. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
But that's another really good direction we could take, because I that keeps coming up in my podcasts a lot with people too. How divided we've become in our world, and we're living in unique times because we've got these computers and This is how we mostly relate to other people now, through Zoom or, some technology, whether it's a phone or, and it's where we get our information. And the way it's designed is specifically with algorithms to keep painting you into a deeper corner, people who think like you think, products that you would want to buy based on your algorithm, what your searches before. So it's kind of put us all into little niches in a way as a byproduct. And so, wow, do we ever need to have a psychological immunity to that virus of division? We need to strengthen our psychological immunity. And when we do, what it does is it helps us see beyond our differences politically, about the vaccine, about what's going on in Ukraine, you name it. We can get divided about it and be on different sides, but when we can see beyond the differences to our common humanity, to that essence that is who we all are. Like in my own family, we're on both sides of the political continuum, within my own children, within my grandkids, my sister, my siblings, etc. It's really interesting getting together for Thanksgiving and holidays. You just don't want to go into political discussions. But for me, what's helped me is to see and feel the love that we all are and that connects us. That helps me to remember that I love that person. I don't have to agree with that person. I don't have to think the same way to continue to love them. Because the love is really the only thing that's really important. And I found that when I can see beyond the beliefs and the differences to the love that's there and to the humanity that's in each person, even if I don't know them, it lowers the temperature. It lowers the defensiveness. It lowers the kind of rigidity, and people become more open. They listen better. They can kind of listen enough to, and non-defensive listening, to really understand what's the grain of truth there. What's the essence of why they think the way they think. And when people can listen in that way, beyond our coverings, our habits of thinking, how we look, how we think, what we believe in, to that essence, it allows us to come to a different consensus. Again, I just watched this thing about Benjamin Franklin, and here he was, the senior statesman in the writing of the Constitution. He mostly listened. He would listen to everyone else. And at the end of it, they'd say, well, Benjamin, you haven't said anything. What do you think? And he would be able to summarize and show the consensus of everything in the group and bring it all back together, this contention. Because there was a lot of rivalries of how we should proceed. But that, and he came from wisdom. He spoke from a non-antagonistic stance that appreciated and respected the differences of each person. And I think in our world, if we could have that compass to guide us in our interactions with one another, we would be able to find a hybrid third way of doing things that would incorporate the differences, respect the differences, but come to a higher understanding that would be a better solution than any one person or one side could come up with. So I'm kind of digressing to that topic right now, but I think it's on everybody's mind these days because it's in our face a lot. And it does relate to recovery, because I know a lot of people in recovery think they can only be around other people who are in recovery like them. There's there's the normies and then there's us. I hear that in AA meetings a lot. There's the normies and then us. And I'm a normie because I was never an addict. But I worked in the addiction people, so they always have looked at me a little skeptically because I wasn't one of them. But we're all from the same source. And when we see that we're from the same source, regardless of our color, our religion, our political affiliations, we see beyond our differences to the essence, and that's where world peace can come from. That's where compromise is a dirty word in a way, but that's where you can blend the differences in a way that creates a hybrid that's better than either individually. It's like falling in love. When people fall in love, we often fall in love with someone who's so different than us, my wife and I included. And yet, through that love, the love has kept us being able to learn from each other and see beyond our limits of our thinking to a broader way of thinking. And so the rubbing together of the differences creates a whole new, broader perspective in a love relationship, or in a family, or in a community. But we've got to get out of this negativity shit. We've got to get away from all of the hatred and the anger, and start to listen to each other in order to break through to the other side of this challenging time we're in, and come to a new world order, a new way of, because we're also connected now in ways that we never have been historically. You can talk to someone like we're doing right now. I mean, here's someone in Australia, there's someone in Scotland, here's someone in the US, people from all over the world, and we're having a conversation. There's no separation of distances. We don't have to get on a boat and travel for 6 weeks to get to England from Boston. We can be there like that. So we're all connected. What an incredible opportunity to bring us together and to see beyond the differences. So anyway, that's kind of a long answer to your point. Digression.
Lovely. Barbara, is there anything that you want to raise at this point?
No, I just really love to hear from others. What questions, what wisdom they would like to call from our wonderful speaker,
or from all of you wonderful people who've got just as much
from each
wisdom
other
as the speakers. Anyone? Any brave soul?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, hi.
3 a.m.
Hello.
look on the pillow as usual. I think
Hi
even
there.
Joe is getting used to this pillow look. But
I
anyway,
am. I love your pillow look. You're so laid back. You're so laid back.
yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for the wonderful. Because I'm 15 years 3 months, and I've been going to AA myself. I went to a rehab in which was a 12-step base, and then I had no clue. In the first week, they took us downstairs and said, we're going to work on shame. And I go, what the hell is that? Shame and carried shame. And I had no clue what they were on. But I got a hint, it's 15 years later, that we're working on our innate something. But that I love what you say, Joe, about that statement, my name is Divyesh and I'm an alcoholic or something. It has always stung. It didn't sting before, like it didn't make an impact, because the fellowship is a lovely thing in AA. Fellowship is one thing, because of friendships you make, the belonging, which I never had, the isolation, being nudged towards belonging, all the good things, and a friend based on honesty. That's a good thing, because, but when the honesty relies a lot on what that word, which I still can't swallow, defects of character. And I mean, yeah, there were many actions which I probably did out of alcoholism, or whatever you want to call it. Alcoholism, let's call it that, because I go to A's. I've got to, but what I'm trying to say is defect of mind. Even that defect of mind sounds a bit, it's not getting palatable anymore. It's becoming, as 3 years ago, I came to the principles through by fluke through Nicola Bird, and then got introduced to all you wonderful people one by one, little by little, more and more. Christian and Mavis definitely waking up for the lovely conversations and forgiveness and all that, and there is a gentleness of being. There's a self-confidence arising a little bit more. There is all the various things which come from innate, as you say, Joe, well-being, rather than constant identification. And the funny thing is, I myself am, I myself can see or feel occasionally, or a lot more now, the well-being, but there are still people in family or extended family or somewhere who, because of my own stance on, I would enter a room, and oh, there's Divyesh, the alcoholic, the guy who goes to AA, the guy is this. So they can carry all that opinions of you, and I used to buy into that. But nowadays, there's a lot more nudge towards, hey, I'm okay, and what do you think of me, or what you might have thought of me, or what you might be holding on is your stuff, nothing to do with me. So the three principles certainly gives, just to start with, confidence in the truth of myself, and a more and more ability to love myself. And that is crucial in every aspect of life. So just wanted to throw that in. Sorry, but I don't know whether there was a question there, but thanks.
No, it was beautiful what you had to say there, and just how, because there is a beautiful thing about um, the the organization of Alcoholics Anonymous and all of the other anonymouses that have sprung from that, because of that fellowship, because people feel acceptance in those rooms. They feel deep love in those rooms. There's an extraordinary spiritual energy that often happens in those rooms. So that was an inspired thing that happened with Bill W. to create the 12 steps, and Dr. Bob, and that, and but it, there's, you can create. Jesus has an extraordinary spiritual presence on this planet, and yet it got codified into all these different forms of Christian religion and dogma, and a lot of horrible things were done in the name of Jesus. So the same thing can happen with any inspired thing that comes into the world. Once you put it into a concept and you lose the juice of the inspiration that it came from, it becomes just the husk of the seed rather than the seed.
Yeah.
And for me, that can happen with the three principles, by the way, too. We can codify and turn it into a thing and into a dogma. But then that's not really what Sid was talking about, if we're doing that, for sure. But that can happen, and I've seen it happen. So you can take any truth and water it down and try to turn it into a thing, but it can only exist in reality, in the moment. It can only exist and come to us in the moment. If I talk about this moment that I'm talking about later, because it was such a good time we had talking with Christian and Barbara and everybody that was there, and this is what I learned, and that's what I learned, and pretty soon you're turning it into a thing rather than where the thing came from. And where the thing came from is what we want to point ourselves to, whether it was Bill W.'s awakening or Sydney Banks's awakening. Sid would always say, don't use my words. Don't follow me. Speak from your own wisdom in your own way. You're a psychologist. I'm not. I'm a welder. You talk like you talk. And he would always remind us, don't follow me. Don't worship me. Don't look to. I'm trying to help you see the truth of who you are. And that's where, but as human beings, we want to get something tangible we can hang on to, a concept, an idea, a book, a ritual, a technique, and instead of going to the source within each of us. And that's, to me, what the beauty of the principles, as esoteric as they may sound with people and psychologists, especially when I try to teach psychologists this. What do you do? How do you do it? What's the theory? Where's the research? Blah 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 blah. And I'm trying to point them to something that's already whole and complete within them as a therapist and within each of their patients. And when you can see that in your patients, they'll start to see it in themselves. And that's what Sid, Sid would always, as my mentor teacher, he always turned me back to trust in my own wisdom rather than following somebody else or precepts. But and that, to me, there's the real deal there. He's not trying to make money off this. He's not trying to create a new school of thought. He's just giving it out freely, expecting nothing in return, in a way that is, it's not packaged as something you can sell. It's the real deal. It's the real deal. And there are people in AA, and there are people in all religions that are the real deal. I had Omar Benamosa on my podcast in March, and he's a Muslim, and he's worked with a lot of imams, but also with a lot of rabbis and people, religious leaders, teaching them the principles or sharing the principles with them. And it's amazing. He said, a lot of people said through the principles, they found the experience of spirituality that the religion was always pointing to. It gave them the experience of the Torah. It gave them the experience of the New Testament. It gave them the experience of the Upanishads, or the Quran. And so the principles being esoteric in the sense that they're not codified in any kind of intellectual construct. They're a living thing. They're a living essence. And so, like, when I share, like I'm sharing right now, I have no idea what I'm saying. I, honest to God, have no idea what I'm saying. So I'm just like, I over the years, the 40 years since I met Sid, I've trusted that more and more and more. And so, God, am I saying it right, or should I say it different? I've kind of released the parking brake and just let her rip. Just trusted that it's going to come out in a way that it needs to. But I still get insecure. I still have, like, I got to give a big talk on Monday in Duluth, and I'm thinking, oh God, the thoughts of, oh God, what if I go blank, or whatever. They still come into my mind, but I know. Yeah, yeah, I don't really take those thoughts seriously. I take them that's just the old habit of Joe, who was phobic about public speaking most of his life. Froze in front of the class in school, just a habit. I'd love to hear from other people. Barbara,
I was just going to say, Joe,
anybody?
when I first met you, Joe was a mentor early on. I sought him out when, to try to really see this understanding in terms of the addiction work that I'd done. And I think one of the greatest memories for me of you and of the whole experience of being in this community and of again, not an intellectual understanding, but a really felt experience of it was just your generosity and your kindness. We met up in New Hampshire and you just spent
Right.
just endless amounts of time just, sharing and just being so willing to welcome me into what you were doing and sitting and talking for hours. And then I remember saying to you, so what do I owe you? And he said, no, he said, just pay it forward, and that is just so life-changing, and when you really when someone does see that in you, or does see in this understanding the power that it has to transform lives, when you can touch someone's soul. And one of the things that Christian and I said in the book about AA is there is nothing like AA in the world. Nothing. There's no other experience that is available to people 24/7 with people who've been there, done that, get that t-shirt, who will take your phone call, who won't charge you, an office visit, who will just sit and be with you with an open heart, at least when it's done right. There are people who really want to teach you, because I think AA, part of the issue with AA is it gets very confusing. The disease concept has confused it, and that it becomes more about the dogma than it does become about the love and the acceptance. But that is so transformational. That experience is so transformational. And all religion and all spiritual seeking really is about that transformation. And when someone can, and just to come back to the topic of the day of resilience, when we can see that in ourselves, that we're designed for that we're engineered for the ability to bounce back, for the ability to land on our feet, to see things from higher and higher levels of understanding and perspective, that just is so confidence building. And so, I think just gives you such a sense of inner peace. And like, the word that you've used so much in so much of your writing, Joe, is the serenity. I mean, that's really what we're looking for. A quiet mind that is filled with serenity is not one that's looking ultimately for an escape. And to know that that's built into our system. You don't have to go out and buy it. You don't have to, go to a lot of conferences for it. It's already there. It's part of who we are. It's part of our design. It's part of our engineering. And when you really see that, and I know I've sort of mixed up a whole bunch of things here, but it just really, I think, is so important to see that how it all plays out together, how knowing how we work, how we're designed, how designed for success we really are, how that plays in with our ability to love and to be generous and to open our hearts. I think it just there's so much to be revealed in this understanding from this very simple shift of a paradigm to seeing a world that is so far beyond what we can see with a model that tells us that we are broken. So that's my 25 cents.
I love that you brought up that thing about success in what you just said. I remember Sid saying when a businessman asked, "Well, what's the secret to success?" And Sid just said, "Contentment." And I got a text from one of my clients this morning, and she's a high-powered executive coach with major corporations, and like she's the coach's coach. She's a real, and so, but she's burned out. And so she heard about the three principles. I can't even remember how, through someone who read my book, and then she read the book, the Thriving book. And so she contacted me. And so she's really quieting down. She's much less intense. She's much less driven. And she said, she wrote me in kind of a panic this morning. I just don't feel like I have this sense of drive and purpose that I've had my whole life. My whole life has just been about success and driving, and I've been at the top of my game the whole time. And I just feel like I feel like I'm losing my juice here. I'm so content. I don't know how I'm going to continue to be successful. How do the principles deal with drive and with purpose and success? And so I just wrote her back, and I said, my whole career before I learned the principles was all about trying to be successful and effective and, get known and write books and blah, 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 all of this. And I was just spinning my wheels the whole time because I was always judging myself and getting in my own way, my insecurities, but I was really stressed out. So I must have been working really hard. So I always thought that if you were working hard and you were really stressed and miserable, you were going to be successful. But when I collided with the three principles and it exploded my world, at first it was like I felt naked. I didn't feel driven anymore. I didn't feel anxious. Now what do I'm just going to be lazy and just sit around and feel good. But I'm here for a reason. I'm here to help people. Where's my juice? Where's my juice? And so I shared that with her. I said, what I found that when I found my own contentment, that I ended up becoming extremely lucky. That old saying, happy-go-lucky. It was like I quit working hard and things seemed to fall in my lap constantly. It was like, it felt effortless to do my work, but I ended up being way, way, way more successful and impactful than I could ever even have possibly imagined. And Sid said, well, you'll be traveling all over the world and teaching this. You'll be writing books. You'll be teaching in universities. And I just thought, this guy is really nuts. He's like, what do you know who you're talking? I was so insecure. I couldn't imagine that. But everything he said has happened. Everything. And it was like, how did he know that? How did he know that? And it just seemed to be a series of coincidences or spiritual connectedness, maybe, or the wisdom of inspiration, being in the right place at the right time because you were following your heart rather than your idea of what you think you should be doing. So there's no there's no area this doesn't apply to. Physical health, financial success, vocational impact as a doctor, therapist, whatever, and it takes the stress out of it. And I wrote, I says you'll be more successful than you ever were, but you'll be doing it by inspiration in a way that feels absolutely effortless, and you wonder how you get paid for it. It just doesn't make any sense. Because I don't know if she believed me or not, but we'll find out the next session.
Wonderful, wonderful. Listen, Joe, that this has just been absolutely delightful, and such a sort of positive reminder of the outcomes of this understanding, how it plays out in our life, how it transforms us, and that, yeah, just the capacity that's available to us. Thank you so much for coming along today and doing this. I am conscious of time, and I know that you also have other competing calls on your time, and but I'm really grateful, and it's been a wonderful call for me. So thank you very much indeed. And thank you for everybody who's been here, and everybody who's contributed, and the recording will be available probably tomorrow now. Thank you very much. It's been delightful.
Yeah, thank you so much, both you and Barbara, for inviting me to share, and for all of you who have listened and shared yourself, and thank you so much.
Indeed. And we do
Thank you.
these monthly, and next month, maybe we don't have it firmed up yet, but we will be doing it at some point. We'll let you know what's next on our agenda. But
you sound like me.
Well, we haven't gotten confirmation, so we better hold off on that, because I don't want to announce it and then it doesn't play out. But anyway, we'll let you know as soon as we do get confirmation, and we hope to see you all again. And again, thank you, Joe, so much for everything that you've offered to both of us and to the world. So
yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.